I'm here to talk about Beyond the Noise, looking at Bitcoin as freedom money for the internet. So let's get started. So you're at a blockchain event. Most of you probably know Bitcoin's roots, but we'll just go over it very, very quickly. Bitcoin was born during the 2008 financial crisis. The white paper was released on October 31st, 2008, and then the Genesis block was created on January 3rd, 2009. And Satoshi was very intentional when he launched the system. Right? The first end of the white paper is commerce on the internet has come to rely almost exclusively on financial institutions, serving as trusted third parties to process electronic payments. While the system works well enough for most transactions, it still suffers in the inherent weakness of the trust-based model. And directly in the Genesis block, there's another quote, Chancellor on the brink of second bailout of banks. And this operates both as a timestamp of when the blockchain was launched, as well as a commentary on the current events back in 2009, what was going on. So the purpose of the system was very clear from the beginning. What might be less known is that Bitcoin had lots of history beforehand as far as the influences that went into the creation of it. So there was a group called the cypherpunks. They were very much a big influence on Bitcoin. The cypherpunks were a 90s counterculture movement that was focused on privacy, individual freedom, cryptography, and digital cash. So they built a lot of systems that were focused on digital cash, but more broadly, they had all these ideas about furthering individual freedom and using cryptography and privacy technologies to do that. So in, I believe it was 1993, a man named Eric Hughes wrote the Cypherpunk Manifesto. I brought a bunch of handouts that have the entire piece on it. You can grab one on the way out. A few quotes from it just to distill the values for what they're trying to get across. Privacy in an open society also requires cryptography. We cannot expect governments, corporations, or other large spaceless organizations to grant us privacy out of their beneficence. We must come together to create systems which allow for anonymous transactions to take place. Cypherpunks write code. We know that someone has to write software to defend privacy, and since we can't get privacy unless we all do, we're going to do it. So not only do they have passive boards, I did not write this. It's from 1993, right? So not only do they have sort of grand ideas, but they're also about individuals taking action on their own to achieve that. So just as a brief overview of some of the things that they built, these are technologies that are used today. Phil Zimmerman, Cypherpunk, built the PGP encryption standard. They were very much into anonymous emailers, which would provide privacy for emails communication. And this ended up being a precursor to systems like Tor. They defended free speech during the crypto wars when the government was trying to classify cryptography as like a weapons-grade system. They showed that it was free speech by printing the entire RSA algorithm on a T-shirt. And of course, they were very much involved in the beginning of digital cash. So a couple of examples, David Shum, the creator of Shamian Blind Signatures with DigiCash. There was Adam Back with Hashcash. There was Nick Szabo with BitGold. And there was obviously Hal Finney with RPow. And he was obviously the recipient of the first ever Bitcoin transaction. And, these people just very much epitomize the saying of cypherpunks write code. Not only did they have these ideas, but they built them themselves. So when Bitcoin came out, there was obviously a lot of interest in, how it worked. And, it's slowly gaining momentum. People started becoming interested in it. And eventually about, a year later, Satoshi is quoted saying, well, I'm sure in 20 years, there will be either a very large transaction volume or no volume. So we're 17 years later, almost 20 years. Where are we? Does Bitcoin have lots of transactions? And if you look at mainstream media, the story is not quite so good. It's mainly been a lot of, fraud. So one of the biggest stories, Mt. Gox. More recently, FTX, the 8 billion fraud that, collapsed the company. Even big companies like Coinbase are essentially just listing shitcoins, a little shitcoin called Porkcoin. And here in Minnesota, we have A lot of attention around the scammers with ATMs, people not knowing, going there, send money to scammers. And then also back when Trump was inaugurated, he literally, yellowed a shitcoin the night of his inauguration. So when you look at mainstream media, in Bitcoin and crypto, it's sort of understandable why there's a lot of maybe negative sentiment around it right now. Then you go look at the Bitcoin blockchain. This is a screenshot from mempool.space. You can pull it up yourself if you want right now. And you can see the fees that people are paying and the amount of transactions that are going through the blockchain. And it's pretty minimal. There's not a lot. You can get in literally to the next block for like the bare minimum amount of Satoshis. So like, what does this mean? Like, this is not obviously maybe what Satoshi was hoping for 17 years earlier. Like, has Bitcoin failed as money? So I think we need to look a little bit beyond the noise about what the mainstream media focuses on. So in my opinion, these are all pretty much just distractions. Bitcoin's core values have not changed. So what are Bitcoin's core values? Consistent monetary policy, 21 million coins. There was never more than that. Digital property rights. If you own a private key to a UTXO, you own that. That will not be taken away from you. Leaderness, governance structure. There is no lead developer of Bitcoin. There is no roadmap for Bitcoin. There's no single person that determines how Bitcoin will develop. It's difficult to change by design. It's not impossible, but difficult. This is a feature, not a bug. If it was very easy, the consistent monetary policy would not be easily enforceable, right? Ownership does not get influence over the protocol. You see, big entities like BlackRock or Michael Saylor stacking a lot of coins. That does not give them more influence over how Bitcoin works. And we saw this back in 2015 to 2017 during the block size wars. The block size wars were sort of, it was a discussion about how to properly scale Bitcoin. But in reality, to look a little bit deeper, it was a discussion about the governance structure of Bitcoin, who controls Bitcoin, who makes decisions. And back then, there was all these big companies that were trying to push for a bigger block size, and it didn't happen. And still to this day, Bitcoin is the only cryptocurrency, an application of blockchain that has all these properties. So, but does that make any good money, right? So let's look at the functions of money. You've probably seen slides like this before. There's store of value. And I think it's been very well established that this is a use case for Bitcoin, right? See, you have big institutions like BlackRock, there's ETFs, there's Michael Saylor stacking, loads of Bitcoin every week. What's less being used now, especially here in the United States, is the method of exchange. The 2013 era of like pushing for paying a Bitcoin has kind of died. And there's a lot of, mantras like don't spend your Bitcoin. And you talk to people and they're like, oh, is that thing still around? No one pays for groceries with Bitcoin, right? And then there's unit of account. And this is probably the one that's furthest out. As far as I'm aware, most Bitcoiners try to get more Bitcoin to stack more dollars, essentially. So I think there's other products that will fit these things, right? Like gold is also a store of value. But in my opinion, what makes Bitcoin truly unique is that it's role as freedom money. So why is Bitcoin, it can fit all of these things, but Bitcoin's really the only asset that can act as freedom money. So let's look at Bitcoin as freedom money. Bitcoin has emerged as a freedom tool for activists worldwide. According to the Human Rights Foundation, only 13% of people globally live in a liberal democracy with free speech and property rights, and also the reserve currency. So that means that 87% of people, like globally, either live in a authoritarian regime or they live in a country that has essentially a infinite money reserve. And financial repression is increasingly used as a tool for authoritarian regimes, shutting down bank accounts, stopping transactions. Bitcoin scarcity allows these citizens with runaway inflation to save. And then also Bitcoin censorship resistance allows them to transact even when they have unfavorable political opinions. So some examples, these are also from the Human Rights Foundation. Navalny back in 2016 started accepting payments in Bitcoin as Putin's primary political opponent. in Afghanistan. In Afghanistan, only 7% of limit of bank accounts. Roya Habu she's a Bitcoin educator and tech influencer, and she's been educating young girls about technology and Bitcoin, and she's been also raising funds since about 2016. In Cuba, Cuba had a top-down government-imposed exchange rate of 21 pesos to $1 that has collapsed down to 300 pesos. And now there's organizations like My First Bitcoin that are essentially they're like underground organizations that are going around Cuba, educating people about Bitcoin. In Venezuela, the recent Nobel Prize winner Maria Machado, she's used Bitcoin to fundraise for her efforts in her opposition to Hugo Chavez. And in Canada, it can happen in the Western societies as well. No matter what you think about the Canadian truckers, they raise money in both fiat and in Bitcoin. All of the fiat payments are confiscated. Only a portion of the Bitcoin payments are confiscated. So I think these two tweets are kind of they've epitomized Bitcoin very well, right? So on the left we have Zia. Zia is a freedom fighter Cameroon, and he's responding to this satirical Bitcoin account about Apple Pay. And he says, I can't use Apple Pay, I can't use PayPal, use our MasterCard. I'm from Iran, but I can use Bitcoin. And WikiLeaks obviously identified this very brilliantly, right? That's on the right. That's a tweet from 2017, where they started accepting Bitcoin donations. Julian Assange actually famously thanked PayPal for cutting him off because he bid a lot of money after all the Bitcoin came in 2011. But so, Bitcoin is not all just freedom money, right? So let's look at a quantum exchange maybe back here in the United States, right? So there has been a bit of momentum picking up. So if you look at like internet native goods, so things like eSIMs, VPNs, domain names, have really embraced Bitcoin as a method of exchange. So on the right here we see the Namecheap, which is one of the big domain name providers. They did 73 million in Bitcoin revenue alone through their BTC Pay server. BTC Pay server is an excellent, it's a point of sale system, but it allows you to receive Bitcoin in a self-custodial way. Stake and Shake, you've heard, but Stake and Shake has embraced Bitcoin in a big way. They say Bitcoin has, helped increase their sales. And then Square terminal adoption. Square's been pushing Lightning payments through their terminals. They recently enabled it up to 4 million merchants. And they've also integrated discovering those merchants into Cash App. So if you have Cash App, you could open it and find the BTC map there. And you would see all the locations pretty much globally that accept Bitcoin. On the right is a screenshot of just the of a bunch of places here in the Twin Cities. So Bitcoin is money. Use it as money. Okay, so I'm a developer. So what I do is I write code all day. What do people working on, Bitcoin as freedom tech, work on? So this is just a very brief overview of some of the things that I'm interested in, but scalable layer twos. So I mentioned the Lightning Network. The Lightning Network is the most common nowadays method of exchange for Bitcoin. It enables millions of transactions per second. And I'm a developer on the project called Fedimint. Fedimint is a federated Shamini eCash system. So you kind of think of it like a bank that is distributed and decentralized. And it uses David Sham's blind signatures, which were invention by the cypherpunks originally for private transactions. Other things include fun, things like multi-sig. There's new companies like FrostNet, BitKey from Block, Liana. They're innovating on how you can custody Bitcoin in a safer way and distribute keys, and many, many other things. So there's never been a better time to build on Bitcoin. So how do you get involved? If you're curious about how to use Bitcoin, is it in a freedom way, and how can you get involved? So if you take one thing away from my talk, I hope that Bitcoin is more than just a number in your brokerage account. It's more than just a store of value. There's things that you can do with it to further human freedom. Learn how to use Bitcoin. Learn how to use it in a private way. Hold your own keys. Run your own node. Those are sort of the two tenets of Bitcoin. You not hold your own keys. You don't own Bitcoin. And I would argue that if you don't run your own node, you also don't own Bitcoin. Upgrade your knowledge, become more sovereign, make these freedom use cases more easy. So as mentioned earlier, I run a meetup called Minneapolis BitDeps. We talk about research and development every month, things like this, things about how to hold your keys securely, how to gain privacy when you use Bitcoin, different systems. We talk about it every month. We had a meetup last night, so we'll have our next one in June. Okay, I'm gonna wrap it up there. So I have three links here. The one on the left is the Fedimint wallet that I work on called eCash App. The one in the middle is a link to learn more about Fedimint for curious about the project that I work on. And then the one on the right is the link to the Minneapolis BitDesk schedule. So before I wrap up, I'll mention I am giving out free eCash. It's literally free Bitcoin, free money. If you want some, come find me and you can get some free Bitcoin. So thank you.